Hi, everyone. John Michael Coppola here, and welcome to the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast, where we chat with the actors, directors, choreographers, designers, producers, music directors, lyricists, playwrights, and all the artists who make the Chicago area theaters come alive. We're so excited to have you here with us today. But before we get started, we just want to remind you to please like, subscribe to, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues who you think would appreciate the conversations we're having. We'd be so grateful for your support in this way so we can continue to bring these stories for years to come. Thanks again for being here, and now, curtain up on today's episode. Today's guest is a Chicago-based theater maker known for her work as a director, teaching artist, private audition coach, and college audition coach. She launched her professional career over 2 decades ago in St. Louis, where she earned her BFA in musical theater from Webster University's Sargent Conservatory of Theater Arts. In the early years of her career, she performed at renowned venues such as the MUNY, the Repertory Theatre of St. Louis, Union Avenue Opera, and Opera Theatre of St. Louis. In 2013, she relocated to New York City, where she quickly joined Actors Equity after touring with Theatreworks USA's Henry and Mudge. That same year, she began working as a coach and advisor at Broadway Artists Alliance and launched her private coaching studio. For over a decade, she has empowered actors to harness their unique strengths and present their most authentic selves in the audition room. While continuing to perform off-Broadway and on tour, her passion gradually shifted toward directing, and she immersed herself in learning all facets of theater making while teaching and directing youth productions at prestigious institutions such as New York City Center, the New York Pops, Arts Ignite, Broadway for Education, and Applause New York. In 2016, she was honored with the Distinguished Alumni Award for Center of Creative Arts of St. Louis. Since moving to Chicago in 2020, she has served as managing director of the award-winning Actors Training Center in Wilmette, where she continues to mentor passionate performers of all ages. Finally, she earned her Master's of Arts in Directing from Roosevelt University's College of Performing Arts in 2021. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Christina Ramirez. Now let's go to the top of the show. Hi, Christina. How are you today?
Hi, JMC. I'm so great. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast. So we have a little custom here on the podcast, and that is to ask all of our guests to please tell our listeners a little bit about where you grew up, a little bit about your training, and most importantly, your first theater experience. So I hand it off to you.
Okay. Multi-part question.
Yes.
So I'm born and raised from St. Louis, Missouri,
Okay.
which, as you and your listeners may know, is a really robust theater town.
Yeah.
But I'm the proud daughter of an immigrant. My dad is from Belize, and his family was native to that region in Central America that belonged to the Mayan people. And my mom's grandmother was from Ireland. So we grew up really proud of our multicultural heritage, even in St. Louis, Missouri. And I think the common thread is that there were always stories and there were always songs. But of course, growing up in St. Louis, obviously I was exposed to incredible theater from a very young age. You know, I grew up seeing shows at the MUNY. It was so weaved into our culture and the culture of my house that, there's home videos of me at 3 years old singing, maybe from Annie and Grease Lightning and
Good stuff. Yeah.
So my first actual memory of a live performance, by then everybody already knows that I have been bitten by the bug. So my first actual memory of a live show, I'm 6 or 7, and it was the Pajama Game at a local high school.
Oh, wow. That's a fun one that nobody produces anymore. It's quite dated.
I know.
Yeah, it's a fun show, though.
Right. And I understand, but it still will always hold such a special place in my heart.
So you grew up in St. Louis. Where did you train?
Yes, I got my BFA in musical theater from the Conservatory at Webster University. So right there in St. Louis. Yes. Yeah. And I didn't go far, which was great, because then when I moved to New York, I was really ready to move to New York.
Yeah.
And then I came here actually for grad school. So I went to the Fast Track Masters in Directing at Roosevelt at CCPA, which was great. I don't want to misrepresent the program. It really is a program that is intended for educators. So it's not a traditional MFA in directing in that sense. But what was great about it is that it took, at the time, and I think the program has changed structurally a little bit, but at the time, it was over the course of 3 summers, which was great because I was pretty well established and rooted in New York, and I didn't really want to uproot my life to do an MFA program for several years in a different city. So that program took place over the course of 3 consecutive summers.
Okay.
It was kind of nice. So I could like keep all of my like school year teaching artist jobs, directing youth shows, and then only be here for 6 weeks in the summer.
You chose the best time of year to be in Chicago. Very, very smart. Yeah.
Exactly. And I used that time here to try to get to know the various neighborhoods and the various theaters and just kind of introduce myself to the scene, thinking that I wouldn't move here still for like another several years. And then of course the pandemic happened, and that, like everyone like rocked our world. So
Have you been back to St. Louis to work?
Yes, I did do some work there as an actress. After I had like moved to New York and gotten my card, I went and I was able to play Louisa in the Fantastics, which was such a special piece. And yeah, I'm really grateful for that experience. While I was there at Webster, I got to work at the Repertory Theatre of St. Louis. I grew up working at the MUNY and all around St. Louis. So
what did you do at the MUNY?
I did Fiddler on the Roof. That was in like 2002.
Okay. When you were living in New York, so you said you were doing a lot of student teaching and a lot of directing when you were there as well. Tell us about some of the student teaching you were doing.
So I was right out of Webster. I got an internship with Broadway Artists Alliance, which is a wonderful organization. And I was a summer intern there, and I kind of immediately started my private coaching studio, like right when I moved to New York City. That was great, like to have the opportunity to just kind of immediately get that going. I knew that I always wanted to coach. And particularly help young artists like through the college audition process and through navigating the industry as young professionals. So I was able to start that right away through my internship with Broadway Artists Alliance, and I wound up working there for 7 years, which was great. But that was seasonal, and so then around like 2015 or so, then I started looking for like school year teaching jobs and residencies. So I was really fortunate. I was a teaching artist for New York City Center, which was just so meaningful to me. And I got to have several residencies like all throughout. I mean, like we're talking like up in the Bronx, Upper East Side, deep Brooklyn, like all over the place. So yeah, I was able to just start kind of like dipping my toe in the water of directing and helping put together youth musicals. And that was sort of the thing that was starting to like spark this, like, oh, I think I really like this. And it was nice because it only typically had to commit, a couple months at a time. So it was always something, it was a job that was easy to leave if I went on a contract and then come back to it and like sort of fold back in.
When you're teaching students in that setting, there's no expectation that they would go into the arts as a full-time professor. Maybe that's where they start getting the idea that they might want to. But what are some of the like tools you start to teach them at that young of an age, when knowing that that's the end goal is not necessarily to be an artist, but to sort of tap into the creative side of themselves that they may not even know existed? I
think one thing, and I have had the opportunity, to work with a lot of really serious young artists who are pursuing this professionally and that, actively have agents and are actively auditioning for things. When I was doing some of those residencies or, going in for like a one-day thing, maybe you're working with a population of students where theater is a little more foreign. And a line in for me was always, sharing my passion, right? That like, I've been passionate about this for as long as I can remember. Like, tell me something you're passionate about. Whether that, is and do you play a sport, and what's your process before you get ready for a game? Well, we as actors are athletes too. And we have a process that we go through to get ready, and we warm up our voices, we warm up our bodies, and making that connection, because I think people, especially for musical theater and theater, there can definitely be a hesitancy for young people, that, oh, I'm going to make you look silly on stage, or I'm going to make you do something really outside of your comfort zone. So
Yeah.
starting actually from a place of like, well, who do you respect, and what movies do you like, and what actors do you like, and then kind of backing in that way of like, oh, interesting, you brought up that person, did you know that they went to Juilliard and studied theater actually before they became this big movie star? So things like that.
Not being an educator, I wouldn't have thought to sort of find a common interest that you can talk to them on their level about, to sort of ease, as you said, back your way, or get that line in to help them express what they're passionate about. That's really great. Do you use any sort of theater, I don't want to say theater games, but like how do you start to engage them in doing the thing, especially when it's like a one-day workshop, if you will? Like what types of things do you get them on the feet doing?
That's a great question. And, it is super dependent on like the size of class that you're working with, the age, experience level. But I do think, some things I always like to start with is breath, literally breath. Like everybody can understand that feeling of, that breath of surprise, right?
Yeah.
That big sort of like, or that breath of relief, right? That sigh of relief. So I think like trying to connect physically, trying to work outside in, especially when it's a group of students that don't have a lot of context for theater yet, starting with something really basic, but that to us as artists is like everything, that connection to our truth, right?
Yeah.
And helping students realize that that's, all we're doing as actors in a certain moment is, like I'm in pursuit of the thing, I'm seeking something from my partner. So finding situations, and I'll say, the way that you're talking to somebody you have a crush on is totally different than the way you're talking to a teacher, than the way you're talking to your parent, right? And so starting to identify like, oh, what do you notice about yourself that changes when your relationship changes, when the thing you want changes, and then where do you notice it in your breath and your body, and how does it connect all the way?
Really cool. And again, really relatable, talking to them on terms that they can understand. So with all the training you've had between Webster and the MFA program that you took, any influential people that really pointed you in the right direction?
Yes, of course. So many people, right?
Sure.
Where without the folks who came before us and paved the way. Jerry Mitchell, who's a fellow Webster alum, has always been a huge, he's always been a huge inspiration to me. My senior year at Webster, we got to do Legally Blonde, and we attempted to do his choreography. And he came in, and did some master classes with us and was with us the whole weekend. That was really wonderful. And I've just always loved anytime he's on a podcast or does any kind of interview, like I'm just like, I love hearing about his process. And, you're doing On Your Feet right now, of course. He was the original Broadway director for On Your Feet. And, I had friends who were involved in that original production, and hearing about, how he led that process really was really inspiring to me. I mentioned working for New York City Center. I was teaching artist there at the time that Sammy Canold directed Evita, and Sammy Canold is one of the youngest, females to ever direct a Broadway show. She directed How to Dance in Ohio when she was like 29.
Okay.
And she has directed, tons of commercial musical theater, but some TV and film now as well.
Wow.
So she's just been a huge inspiration to me, just to see like a young female in the field, just kind of like going for it and doing the thing. And I think, she has taught me so much by way of like listening to her speak, and I, about just like the real like responsibility and privilege that it is to kind of be at the helm of the ship, and just balancing like what a huge responsibility and privilege it is to be the one deciding, who gets the job.
With that mentioning of helming the ship and being a director of a show, it's very different than being a cast member of the show and just being an actor. So do you miss performing and the less that not the fact that there's less pressure of not having to make those decisions, or do you really prefer the director's path?
What I directing is so challenging.
Mm-hmm. In many rewarding ways, for sure.
Yes, right. It's so challenging. I think that for me, it's such a great balance of like both sides of my brain. Um, I do, I have to remind myself like what a big part of, just like how therapeutic even like singing a song can be. I literally have to remind myself like, oh yeah, Christina, you can still like sing show tunes in your car. You can still like go to karaoke. Like, we like to put ourselves in boxes.
Yeah.
And I think, I've always been a multi-hyphenate before I knew what a multi-hyphenate was, really, before people were talking about it and talking about building careers as multi-hyphenates. You have so much experience with that yourself, working on all sides of the table. And so I think for me, I love kind of constantly being in a different position, and I still I will still perform at like fundraisers, and I have a solo cabaret act that I did here at Hey Nani in 2023, so like I will still do things occasionally, but it's like it's those like little one-off moments, and then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that was fun, great, and then I'm good.
Same, totally agree. I also have a solo concert that once my group, the 4C Notes, sort of got busy the last 12, 13 years, like that went in the wayside. And now just the last couple of years, I've sort of, shaken the cobwebs off and retooled it a little bit. And I've been trying to book it again because I have such a good time doing it with a big 7-piece band behind me. And it is, you sort of forget that you've got that part of yourself. And then now that I'm back performing full time too, it's kind of, it was really daunting at first. And now I'm kind of like, okay, I actually can still do 8 shows a week. And yeah, I'm tired at the end of the week, but I feel so fulfilled and relieved that I can do it. So yeah, I amplifying all those things you mentioned, because
and like the industry is always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially in times when you're sort of like in between, I'm I'm sitting right now, so you can't see, I'm not even 5 feet tall. I'm 4'8" actually. So like being such a specific type in the world, I mean, like that's a thing, right? And what's great about directing is, I'm no longer like limited by the stories that I get to have like a really strong point of view about, and worlds that I knew that I understood and had something to say about, and now I get to play in those worlds. So
bravo. You also are the managing director of Actors Training Center in Wilmette, and you're one of its instructors. Tell us a little bit about your journey to that position and your roles there.
I'm so grateful to Carol Debo, who's the founder and executive director of the Actors Training Center. And we are about to enter our 20th year in 2027.
Okay.
So she had a long legacy before I even started, and I'm so grateful to her for really taking a risk on me. I had moved here from New York. Basically, she hired me like sight unseen. We met on Zoom in July of 2020.
Amazing.
I started on August 1st, 2020, and I moved here September 1st, 2020, basically.
Still during the pandemic.
Yes.
So was a lot of the teaching at that time over Zoom?
Yeah. So we were really like pivoting midair. Now, obviously, like I was actively teaching full-time in New York City. So I had already experienced, I was at that time an assistant director of musical theater at a studio in New York City.
Okay.
And so I had already pivoted with another acting school. Yeah. So it wasn't like, but everybody was in this, time of trying to figure out what would work and what wouldn't.
Right.
And yeah, I had met with a few of the board of directors on Zoom as well. And I said to them, on paper, this is my dream job. So to me, this sounds like the perfect opportunity to figure out if it really is my dream job. And it's a huge privilege to get to do what I do. It is of course, everybody wants to like be the boss until you're the boss and you have
Yes.
to be the one, who gets called if the, heat goes out, or you're the one on the phone if there's like a dissatisfied customer, things like that. So,
Yeah.
um, it's been a job that really has like allowed me to grow in so many ways. And Carol and I were so aligned in that we are so passionate about training young artists to actually what the business expects them to do and know. You can be the most talented person in the world, but you've got to know how to navigate the industry side of things.
Yeah.
And so that was, why Carol really had founded ATC in 2007. And part of why we, remain to be successful is because the industry is always changing. And we're right on the top of what is changing and how it's changing, and helping young artists be successful.
Now, the fact that you've gone from actress to director, now manager of the school, you've had a lot of experience in all those areas. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned at those various roles as you'd like to say as a theater maker, but of course you're more than just a theater maker, you're also a teaching artist.
Pick up the phone. Everyone my age and younger, we kind of like grew up in a generation of not having to talk on the phone. Pick up the phone. The second you find yourself, spending 15 plus minutes on an email, that isn't like an initial reach out to someone, like a response to someone that you're in, pick up the phone. And that
so easy and so brilliant at the same time. Totally.
Yes. And I will actually credit, Elizabeth Mazer-Levin, who's the artistic director at Oil Lamp. I learned that from her immediately, basically, when I started working with them. And that has been like the single biggest, game changer for me this past, 2.5, 3 years now that I've been working with Oil Lamp. And I, across everything I do, just pick up the phone.
Brilliant. Because everyone's got them. Everyone's got their phones all the time.
Yeah. And we're so reliant on email and text. And there's so much that people can misinterpret in writing. And the second that you're in conversation, you're in conversation. And it's no longer like a one-way thing into the void and assuming how it's going to land on the other person and what they might, and again, it saves so much time. Yeah. Because before, I might catch myself 15 minutes into a response to a parent, or, just pick up the phone.
Yeah. Love it. Of all the episodes we've done here, that's the first time anybody has said pick up the phone, because I don't think we think in those like granular terms. We think about all these other larger things, but it's as simple as just pick up the phone, have a conversation with somebody, get to the point, get it all figured out in real time rather than waiting for responses. Love it. Thank you for bringing that to everyone's attention, including mine. Now, I wanted to talk about your directing pursuits because you have a couple of projects coming up. One is The Last 5 Years at Oil Lamp and Ruthless at Citadel Theater. I'd love to, first of all, hear, did you choose the shows? Did the theaters choose the shows and then they chose you?
Yeah, such a good question. So I did pitch Ruthless to Citadel.
Okay.
I pitched it in October of 2024.
Wow.
And it's going to go up this April of 2026. So just to give people a little bit of insight in the time that, that was another huge lesson I learned when I moved here, was how far in advance moves are being made. And that, is really why it took me 2 years of just like adjusting and figuring out like my work-life balance before I even started to pursue anything else.
Yeah.
So I did pitch Ruthless to Citadel. I was like, I don't know, your subscribers better than me, but I had seen Dames at Sea there. So I knew that like pastiche comedy and, sort of like throwback comedy, I had a feeling that it might work. Ruthless, if you don't know, is it's a parody musical of the 1956 movie The Bad Seed, which 11-year-old Patty McCormick got an Oscar nomination for. She's a sociopathic child. And she has this like need to, in the Bad Seed, she needs to like have this medal. And so the show's creator, Joel Paley, he was like, well, what would I kill for at 8 years old? He wanted to write Seedy, the Bad Seed musical, as like an ode or a tribute to it, but he couldn't get the rights. So then when he didn't get the rights, he was like, okay, I'm going to pivot like we do. And he was like, well, now I can parody it. And then if I parody it, I can parody Gypsy, I can parody Mame, I can parody All About Eve. So he started to kind of put together everything that had ever inspired him. And he said, what would I kill for at 8 years old? The lead in the school play.
Love it. Love it.
So that is the premise of Ruthless. And it's just so fun. It's just like total dark comedy camp, and it really is like, I really consider it just like a twisted love letter to show business. Of course, you know, growing up a child actor myself, working with so many parents of young actors and young artists, you know, it is such a parody, and there are still moments that you're like, yep, that hits. that resonates. So it's just like a total romp. Super fun. Britney Spears, Natalie Portman, and Laura Bell Bundy were all either, you know, played the little girl or understudied the little girl in the original off-Broadway production.
Right. I remember back then when it was first was produced in New York. I mean, we didn't know their names then, but as they became famous, they were like, oh, right. We're here and Ruthless.
And I just love the lore of that, you know?
Yeah. And it's not a very big cast, right? It's quite small.
Yeah, 7 actors.
Okay, yeah. Citadel is known for their smaller footprint, so that would stand to reason that they're doing a smaller show. And then last 5 years at Oil Lamp, which is later, is it later this year or next?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just right after.
It's a show that I'm familiar with, and probably some of our listeners, but give us a little context of what that show's about.
Love the last 5 years. Yeah. Jason Robert Brown, creator, of course, of basically, you know, a 90-minute sort of song cycle of the last 5 years of this relationship between Jamie and Kathy. And as we watch it, we're watching her narrative move backwards in time, her starting at the end of the relationship. And for Jamie, we're seeing it in chronological order of their relationship. And Jason Robert Brown really says, you know, it's about two people who desperately want to be together and they can't. And there's so many stories and so much media, you know, rom-coms that work. Yeah. And there's such a small percentage of art that's about, you know, when a relationship doesn't work out. But we know that the vast majority of relationships don't have the happy ending. So it's just like a really beautiful look at this relationship and kind of what it means to wrangle with what you think you want, you know, what you think you want. And then when you get it, and then life has another idea for you or puts other things in your path that test that. Yeah. And how it unfolds. And of course, the original, you know, out of town tryout happened right here at Northlight Theater in Skokie. Yeah. So,
starring Lauren Kennedy and Norbert Leo Butz. Yeah.
Yes. Norbert Leo Butz, also St. Louis, also a St. Louis.
Webster?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Had no idea.
Born and raised in St. Louis and Webster alum too. So
wow. Yeah, I've never seen. I know last 5 years very well. I have it on repeat on my music theater playlist, of course. But I've never seen a live production of it, so I'm looking forward to that one.
Oh yay! Yeah. Well, Oil Lamp Theater. So they have just 60 seats in that theater, so it's very tiny. And that was the first show when I met Elizabeth in 2022. That was like the first show, you know, that I had ever like pitched in that space. But again, you know, you think about like seasons and all the things. And so I'm so grateful that it came back around, and that's been like the most requested show. It's been the most recommended show by subscribers, by people. You know, people want Oil Lamp to do the last 5 years.
That's really impressive because, you know, the North Shore Chicago is, I wouldn't say predominantly older, but, you know, a lot of these artistic institutions are well funded by older demographics who have money. And the fact that that's a rather contemporary show, really more well known to people of our generation. So it's really
Sure.
encouraging to know that that was really highly recommended and requested by their audience base, because
Yeah.
I would have never guessed that that was how the idea of producing that show came to be.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the opportunity to explore it in that space. And hopefully, this will be my third show that I'm directing for Oil Lamp. So, having worked in this space now several times, that's always a benefit, right?
For sure.
Once you've worked in a space, because the first time you're doing it, you're still really getting to know the space.
Yeah.
And how, and having that audience perspective and, just learning all of that and really what works great.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited. So that's going to open the first week of June.
Okay, great. I'll be on the lookout for when tickets open up for that. Are they already on sale?
Tickets are already on sale, but the cast announcements for both shows should be coming quite soon. We're pretty close to St. Patrick's Day around here.
Okay.
And so the Ruthless cast will be announced this third week of March, and then hopefully the Last 5 Years cast will be around the third week of April.
Fantastic. Yeah, I actually happen to know one of the Ruthless cast members because we're connected on the socials. I'm sorry, I won't say who that is. But I'm curious, since you worked at Citadel before, at Oil Lamp before, have you worked with my friend Spencer Donovan? Has he designed for you up there?
Yes. Actually, Spencer has designed all three shows that I've worked on at Oil Lamp. He's a fabulous collaborator.
Yes.
And, I have to say that is one of my favorite parts of the directing process. That's different from, when you're an actor, is really those artistic collaborations that happen across all the various departments, and kind of how, sometimes I second guess myself, like, okay, am I conveying the idea of what's in my head? Is somebody going to get it? And particularly with Side by Side by Sondheim, which Spencer designed last summer.
Yeah.
And I was like, so our show is happening at the intersection of cabaret, Sondheim, and Sondheim's living room, writing rooms, whatever, and then this old theater feel. And I just had this very simple mood board, and I was like, so there's these three kind of things talking to each other. And Spencer took it away and came back, and I was like, oh my God, I never ever would have been able to say that is it was so beyond what I could ever imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, he's quite talented. He's a friend, and he was on the podcast last season. And I knew that he's worked up at Oil Lamp before, but I wasn't sure if you guys had crossed paths. So I'm grateful to know that you had such a positive experience with him as I did.
Oh my gosh, yes. I adore working with him. And that's really exciting now. In my position at ETC, when I'm directing the shows or if I'm producing the shows, I do have the privilege and responsibility of hiring designers very oftentimes. So that's been great, just kind of getting to know so many talented designers across so many disciplines. And then what's really fun is having the opportunity to, collaborate with them at one theater and then maybe collaborate with them at a different theater. And it's really exciting.
What's one piece of audition advice you would give to people who are, regardless of whether they're auditioning for community theater or professional theater, young, old alike? What's your one golden piece of audition advice?
I mean, the in the room audition advice, it's the same thing that you hear everybody say, is just that everyone in the room wants you to succeed, and that your audition starts the second you enter the room. How you are interacting with the accompanist, your ability to sort of succinctly convey what you need and build that trust and treat that artist with respect. The accompanist is your scene partner in that moment, in that audition. So just little things like that. It's all of it is so much easier said than done, right? Yeah. To just trust, and that you are enough, and to just nothing to prove, only to share, all of the things that you hear. And it's everyone can keep saying it and keep saying it. And it's always going to be the thing, to try to carry with you in the room. And of course, easier said than done.
Yeah, always. We've heard people now say, I just get to go be an actor today, or I just get to go to work today and perform, even if it's for 2 minutes in a room. That has really helped me sort of reframe my audition frame of mind, because getting back into this after so long, it's the one, no one loves auditioning. Everyone hates it. But that's really helped me sort of be like, I don't care how, I care how it goes. I'm just going to go have fun, do my thing, and walk out of that room. And as you said, always easier said than done.
And I think, one thing that I very often tell like my teenage students who are in the very competitive college audition landscape is like, set one tangible goal in the room. You have no control over whether or not you get a call back, right? That's not a goal you can achieve in the room. Right. A goal you can achieve in the room is like, I am going to, activate my scene partner so three-dimensionally in my imagination, and I am going to try as hard as I can to like fight for that objective. Like, that is a tangible goal that you can give yourself in the room.
And if you achieve that goal, that will read above any other thing you can't control. They'll see through that for sure.
Totally.
What advice would you give those who would want to pursue a career in theater?
Yes. Okay. So a couple things.
Yeah, please.
One thing is learn how to write an effective reach out.
Oh.
As I have said, I'm in a position and wear many hats where I have deciding power oftentimes, or I have the privilege and responsibility of hiring people, and learning how to write an effective reach out. There is an art to it. There's a book, Reach Out by Molly Beck, 2017. Get good at the art of reaching out, right? It shouldn't always be every time you're reaching out that you're asking for a job. And if you are asking for a job, like double checking that all of your links work, not putting the person who's on the receiving end, like not creating more work for them, but really packaging it all right there. Everything is linked. You're not requiring them to download, humongous files into their system. A lot of folks have, like filters set up anyway, that if you're, trying to attach some giant file, it's not going to make it there anyway. I think so many people, you don't want to like share your reach out with your friend or whatever, but like at least send it to yourself, like be on the receiving end of it and make sure that it looks good and how you want it and that the links work. And I schedule send my reach outs, because sometimes it can be really vulnerable to reach out to someone. You can be like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm like sending this email. So I will like schedule send my reach outs when I like know that I'm going to be like in a yoga class or in a bar class. I'm like, it like sent while I was doing something else. I forgot all about it. I wrote it days before, and then it's scheduled sent while I'm like busy off doing other things.
That is by far my favorite feature of email programs now. Like, especially if I'm writing something like late at night, or like it's Friday at 5 o'clock. I'm like, this is going to get buried. I'm going to set it for Monday, 8 o'clock in the morning, especially if it's on the East Coast, because then it's 9 o'clock there. And I've even taught my son. He never really used it, but now he's recognized the efficiency of it, and also just the fact that you can get it in front of people's eyes when you want them to see it. Yeah. I love that advice.
It sounds like you're a subscriber already to that.
I am, but people
have philosophy, so I love it.
Our listeners may not be, so now they've heard it from you.
The second one is, I think, something I struggled a lot with in my early 20s. I think hyper creative people, people that have lots of talents and skills and can wear many hats. There is sometimes a pressure that we put on ourselves to like entrepreneurialize like everything that we do. Like everything has to be a business. Not everything that you do creatively has to be a business. Like you can just like paint because it's fun, or you can just like, you have to keep something for yourself. And for those of us who like live, eat, sleep, breathe musical theater and have our whole lives, like you can still do musical theater for fun while you're pursuing it as a career too. If you need that musical theater outlet in your life, figure out what is the hobby version of musical theater that isn't going to be preventative to you achieving success in musical theater, the business, but find that group of friends that you can read through a show with, on Zoom, that you can, or in person, do the musical theater book club thing, like go to, in New York, I think probably downtown too, you can get like a private karaoke room, like go sing karaoke with your friends. Like, not every single part of your art can and needs to be a business. And that's really hard for those of us who are like entrepreneurial minded, and we're like all about the business, and you're like, I'm going to succeed in this business. You have to have hobbies, and you have to have things that you are not trying to tie to your success in the industry.
Yeah, that's a really, really important one, I think, because we oftentimes get stuck in, well, everything costs money. So we feel like we have to try and get more money to be able just to sometimes just survive. And we sort of forget to give ourselves the agency to just live our life and enjoy our life, even if it's not bringing in an income.
Right.
So, and it's hard to do, and a lot of us just don't. So thank you for confirming that that is something we should do for ourselves.
And I think too, like, you'll find when you do that, then you have more energy to go back and attack the business side of it, right? Because part of that rest or unwinding or just fun, like part of releasing that creative energy reignites the, that motivation that you need then to like get up the next morning and pound the pavement and do it all over again.
Yes. Christina, before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to cover or tell our listeners?
This has been so much fun. I'm really, really grateful to you, for providing this platform, and for using it as a platform, to help folks. I'm very big into, like, there's so much, and to your point, everything costs money.
Yeah.
Everything costs money. And I think so many times as artists, we feel, taken advantage of, that people, want to profit off of the insecurity that artists can feel.
Yes.
But there are so many incredible free resources that are out there, like podcasts, right?
Yeah.
So you really are doing, tremendous work
Thank
here.
you.
And I'm so grateful to you for creating this platform and for having me on.
I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate you reaching out, because we always do want to hear from people, theater makers in town who we don't know personally. You and I had never met till I got your email, and I'm glad that we are connected now. And for those people who don't know you, either in person or socially, where can people find you online?
I'm Christina Ramirez Creative. Christina Ramirez Creative on Instagram, and ChristinaRamirezCreative.com.
Fantastic. And if they want to reach you at Actors Training Center, of course, they could do that as well.
Christina at Actors Training Center.
Fantastic. Well, Christina, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for the kind words. This was a great conversation. And I can't wait to come see both Ruthless and The Last 5 Years, the ticket links for which we will have in our show notes, of course.
Oh, amazing.
You bet. Thanks for joining us at the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The Chicago Theater Makers Podcast is a production of Spirit Art LLC, and our podcast theme music is by Paul Langford. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, please drop us a note at our website, ChiTheaterMakersPodcast.com. That's ChiTheater, makers with an S, podcast.com. We hope you enjoyed spending time with us as much as we enjoyed spending it with you, and we'll see you on the board soon.